March 2nd, after living together for 14 months, Bard informed her, "While I love you very much, I've decided I'm not capable of living with anyone." To say this rocked her world was an understatement. She was devastated. Although, if she was honest, she knew deep in her heart this might have been coming. Bard had proposed on the beach in Hawaii at sunrise on March 8th the year before. So romantic. But since then, he'd been unwilling to engage in a substantive conversation about a wedding date. At first, it was, let's just enjoy being engaged. All the details of planning a wedding are stressful. As the months passed, while all appeared well in their relationship on the surface, subconsciously, she knew things weren't right. This subconscious awareness was no doubt the reason she'd been having nightmares for the past few weeks. Serious nightmares where you wake yourself up screaming. Her heart was utterly and completely broken by the announcement. Bard was the love of her life. She adored him. Now, she needed to move out of his house. The days were a haze, and the announcement came on Monday of her third week on a new job. She felt like lead weights were attached to her ankles as she treaded water, desperately trying to keep her head above the surface. Utterly broken, devastated, and crushed, each day crawled by painfully slow as she tried to show up for work and maintain a smile, only to have to go home and pack for a relocation. But to where? She decided that she'd move back to Modesto to live near her daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren. Looking back, it's crazy to think how well she kept it all together those first few weeks. She met with her friend Shelley that day, who had the gift of prayer. Shelley previously had encouraged her to get in the Word and read James. Strangely, she found comfort in James 2-4. And I quote, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." While she found it difficult to be thankful for this trial, those words caused her to ask herself many questions about her circumstance. They sat in Susan's car in Shelley's driveway and prayed for clarity, direction, and that Susan would feel his love. She had really hit rock bottom, felt like the world was spinning out of control, and despite being in survival mode and maintaining, at this point she felt more vulnerable and insecure than she'd ever felt in her life. Shelley's prayers were comforting. She prayed that Susan would open her heart and mind to hear God and allow him to guide her. Susan remembered a song that she'd sung in church. "Oh Lord, hear my prayer, Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, please answer me." Susan sang this song out loud as she drove to the junior college where she was looking for work. She parked the car and walked across the campus to sit on the steps facing the music building. On the way, a red camellia bush, perfectly shaped and fully loaded with blossoms, stopped Susan in her tracks. Gazing at its beauty, tears began streaming down her face. She stood there, spellbound, feeling the tears on her cheeks and marveling at the beauty of nature. She walked over to the steps and sat down facing the music building, the nearby birch trees reflected in the glass building front, amplifying this beautiful setting. She breathed, gazing at the scene. Then God spoke to her. He said, "Susan, this is where you belong. You are home." Goosebumps and tingles radiated through her body. Feelings of joy, peace, and the weight of the world seemed to lift off her shoulders. All at once, she had clarity and a vision of what she needed to do. Never before had she experienced such peace, joy, and clarity of direction. As she stood, she felt like she was walking on air, literally a foot off the ground. It was incredible. Prior to this experience, Susan had been skeptical when people had told her God had spoken to them. Now, she's a believer. Nothing can ever replace that moment in time for the depth of the experience and the physical and emotional transformation that occurred and the events it set in motion. It seemed people, complete strangers, were going out of their way to be kind to her at every turn. God was sending his angels to lift her up. She found and rented a room in the Bay Area almost immediately. It was as if God had steered her right to it, which she is sure He did. She's questioned that message she heard that day, asking herself over and over, what did He mean? This is where you belong. You are home. At first she thought He meant working at Modesto Junior College because as she heard those words, she felt like she could see her future there. It's been a little over 2 months since God spoke to Susan, and she moved into her temporary rented room, living in the Bay Area during the week and Modesto on the weekends. She struggles often with not having her own place and space, being separated from the love of her life, and having her entire future in limbo. But every day gets a little easier. She has established a goal to be in her own place again by Thanksgiving. Susan's daily focus is one, to stay in the Word. Each day begins and ends in the Word, reading a devotional titled Jesus Calling, enjoying peace in His presence. 2, getting at least 30 minutes of exercise and eating right every day. 3, doing something to make a difference in someone else's life. And 4, looking for jobs in the Central Valley. When she rests her head on the pillow at night, regardless of her outward circumstance, she knows she is right where she belongs, with Him. The future is in His hands, and it will all work out. I am Susan. Now, where's your praise report?